Brains. Brains. Num 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 num. This is a video response to the most recent episode of the Cinefiles. If you don't know what the Cinefiles is, it's a movie review and discussion show. It is actually, bar none, my favourite sort of movie discussion show out there on the web or on television for that matter. And I have no idea why it hasn't been, so these guys haven't been picked up and put into sort of major show, movie review show in America. They really should have been. But anyway, enough of me gushing. If you want to check out the Cinefiles, I really suggest that you do. You can check out a link to their channel below. Anyway, in the most recent episode of their show, they were talking about the Predator franchise, and I thought there were some really interesting points raised about the franchise, and I thought I would like to sort of talk a little bit about those films myself. Now, I should say I have not seen Predators. I don't really need to now because I stupidly continued to watch the last section of this episode of the Cinefiles. So I know what happens now, but that was my bad. I shouldn't have kept watching. But anyway, so I'm not really that interested in watching Predators, to be honest. But I am a big fan of the franchise as a whole. Also, won't be talking about Alien versus Predator films because the Cinephiles didn't discuss them. So anyway, talking about the first film, I am in complete agreement with the guys. I think the original Predator film is a high quality, excellent action stroke adventure stroke science fiction film. I think although I think there were a lot of films around that time in the 1980s which went for a similar vibe, and I think many tried to sort of copy Predator, but I think some of the things that make the film really strong for me, I think first of all is the monster design by Stan Winston. I think an incredibly it's an incredibly individual design, but it also I always felt that it seemed real as a kid when I was watching it. It was like it's really reminiscent of other animals on uh, or like on the planet Earth. The planet Earth. I don't know what I'm talking about. It's like it's reminiscent of some real animals. I think the skin colouring, I think is almost reptilian in some ways, and I think the famous sort of mouth is a little bit similar to sort of like wild boar with the tusks, and I think that added to it as well. I think also the fact that the the creature is very lean and athletic, but also muscular. And if you watch like the Aliens versus Predator films, it really didn't work because one of the big problems with the Predator was that they made them really bulky and like bodybuilders, and that was really problematic for me. They did not look like sort of agile hunters. I mean, they looked like they could hardly even move their neck in the suits. Whereas in the original film, although the Predator's this really imposing figure, even bigger than Arnie, I think that it still comes across as being agile enough to like leap from tree to tree as you see as the film progresses. I think also the film has a sort of ensemble nature to it as well. Although Arnie is definitely the star, and we have the whole history between him and the Carl Weathers character, I think all of the actors that they got in to play the different soldiers really helped define, without much dialogue, without much exploration of like their history, they each managed to define their characters in a really solid way. So they, when the characters actually started getting killed, and I should say there's going to be major spoilers in this video, when the characters started getting killed, you actually did feel for them because they were defined, they were three dimensional, and they managed to do that in a very efficient way. I think as well you've got the you've got a little bit of, I don't suppose you call it human drama, but you've got the subterfuge sort of aspect between Carl Weathers' character and Arnie, and how there's a little bit of a betrayal going on there, which I think was interesting. Obviously, the special effects played a big part in it as well. I think the effects that they used for the invisibility and the weaponry as well, which is one of the things that Mike said in the Cinefiles. He said that it was almost James Bond-esque, you know, the all the gadgets that the Predator has, and I totally agree with that. I think as a kid when I watched Predator, I was fascinated by, you know, what is this thing, and you know, all these cool gadgets that I had. That was kind of like hypnotizing as a kid, you know, because as a kid you just love things like that. Um, and I think the whole ritualistic aspect to the Predator as well is really strong. The fact that he takes trophies, the fact that he will not kill someone who is unarmed. There's a level of honor, so you can fear the creature, but there's also a level of understanding with it as well. And other than that, I think there's great pacing throughout the film, and it just has a fantastic climactic fight. You know, I mean, that's what really makes Predator in my view. It's like at the end of Aliens, you have this fantastic, you know, iconic fight. And it's not quite up there with Aliens, but I think the end, the confrontation at the end between Arnie and the creature is absolutely incredible. And I do think some of the production shots you have of Arnie when he's covered in the mud and you just see those sort of piercing eyes that Arnie had, I think they are quite iconic within Arnie's career. I think Ed mentioned that he thought that Predator was like maybe Arnie's best film outside the Terminator, alongside like Total Recall. I'm not sure I agree with that. I think Predator's a really great film, but I think Arnie did a lot of good films. You know, obviously Conan the Barbarian. I even think something like Twins. I'm not saying it's better than Predator, but I think Twins is a really excellent comedy. I think True Lies is a great film. And I totally agree with Total Recall. I think that's a fantastic movie as well, and even Terminator 2. But Predator definitely is right up there. And you realise when you start listing these films, you realise how many, you know, really great, fun, entertaining films Arnie actually made throughout the 1980s and into the early 90s. So yeah, that's all I can really say about Predator. I want to talk a lot about Predator 2 because Ed and Mike both said that they hated it. They thought it was woeful. It was a terrible film. That, you know, not only was it problematic in terms of being a sequel, like, you know, you have the hype, you've got the expectation of what it's going to be, but that also as a standalone movie, it just doesn't work. That it's, I think the big problem for Ed was the Danny Glover character, not just the character, but the way Danny Glover played him, the characterization. But I have to say, I really like Predator 2, and I agree with Eric. I probably like it more than Eric does because I actually think it is a good film. But Eric did at least say that he had recently watched it and found it entertaining, which he didn't when it had first come out. I've always felt that Predator 2 was actually a really solid sequel. I love the opening shot where you think it's in the jungle and then it lifts up to the sort of urban jungle, you know, and we see the city. I thought Danny Glover did a great job as the lead, you know, when you actually look at his character that was playing at the same time in Lethal Weapon, who's this older guy who's not a very imposing figure, and then in Predator 2 he's like this really sort of imposing police officer who, you know, just doesn't take shit from anyone, and I think the fact that he can play such a wide range there between those two characters, I think was quite impressive. I loved the fact that they took it into the city because, like Eric said, that's what a sequel should do. A sequel shouldn't just be a retread. It should extend. Think what, although the Predator films aren't on the same level as the Alien films, think what James Cameron did with Aliens, where he realised he couldn't make a retread of the first film, and I think Predator 2 is in a sort of similar vein. It's the whole urban jungle aspect of it is fantastic. I think there's a great atmosphere to it in places as well because there's this sort of sweltering heat wave, which sort of implies why the predators go there in one sense. I think the idea of this, you know, the gang warfare um, aspect of it is a really good idea. I agree with some of the guys said it's an underdeveloped idea. I think if they brought that into the film, um, so that it had more of a domineering sort of place within the story, I agree. I think it would be more interesting. Whereas the film opens with this sort of huge gunfight, and in the mystery of what happened to these people, but they've obviously come to a sticky end at the hands of the Predator. I agree that it then sort of drops away from that, and then it seems to all be about the Predator, and the whole gang warfare thing comes up a couple other times, but it's not central to the film. And I think if it had been closer to the centre of the film, it really would have made it more interesting. I really liked Bill Paxton in this film. I think Ed said that he thought he was, kind of cheesy, and he was a bit sort of goofball, but I think that's what his character was supposed to be. And Bill Paxton always sort of played these sort of quirky characters at that time. And when his character died, I was gutted. When I was a kid watching Predator 2, I was like really gutted. Because I remember, like, I mean, it's been a while since I've watched Predator 2, but I remember, I say a while, like maybe 2 years or something like that. But I think he goes in quite a sort of heroic fashion. I remember the whole train sequence, which I thought was interesting, but I think at the same time there's a quirkiness aspect to some of that scene which does jar with what Predator 2 is, which is essentially this science fiction monster action flick. I thought it was the whole idea of them trying to catch the Predator, and the army unit that was brought in, Gary Busey, I thought was very good in it. But yeah, and it was interesting because you guys said that the Gary Busey character was supposed to be the Arnold Schwarzenegger character from the first film. I'm really quite gobsmacked at that. I mean, I'm assuming that he would have been the main character. Like, I'm assuming they wouldn't have just have brought him in for a small part and then killed him off. You do at least get to see a picture of Arnie in Predator 2 when they're sort of bringing up his file. But yeah, I just found Predator 2 a much more solid, well-made film than most sequels, to be honest. I think it is a really solid sequel, and I think it is a film that, with time, I think, another 10 years or so, I think people, it's never going to be seen as a masterpiece because it just quite frankly isn't. But I think as time goes on, it will be recognised as trying to do something that was different from the original. I think the structure to it is fine. I don't think it really lags. I think it's entertaining. And I think, again, it has a confrontation which is memorable at the end of the film. Not in the same way that you have in the original movie, but it is a memorable confrontation. I think the whole fight with the Predator and the Predator ship, and also seeing all the different skulls of all the creatures that the Predator has collected. I don't think that they were really thinking about Alien versus Predator at that point. I actually think they just threw that skull in as a little bit of a gag, and then that sort of put the two franchises together, and then people looked at the success of the graphic novel and the Dark Horse comics and said, well, let's make an Aliens versus Predator film. So yeah, that's my thoughts on Aliens, no, Predator and Predator 2. I will watch Predators at some point. I don't hold out much hope for it, but sometimes that's when you enjoy a film the most, when you go to it, you don't expect much, and it surprises you. I don't know. But anyway, here's to Prometheus. Tenuous link there. And another great show, guys, and I will catch you all later. So remember, check out the Cinefiles below.